I think it's a real word.
Next, you're gonna tell us
Gobstopper
isn't a real word.
Well, technically it's two words. Gob is like vernacular for like a mouth, and stopper, and it's like it's a jawbreaker.
Well, so it's got two roots, but it's still one word.
It's written as one word. It's a compound word. Is there a P in it? I miss this microphone.
There's something squishy on here. What's squishy on my pants?
We should bring a black light.
The leather's a little slick this week.
We should bring in a whole CSI. We should bring in a whole.
Where the hell is that chatty girl voice that's supposed to be in the background? Shut up! It's time for episode number 13 of the list. Apparently the number 13 has fallen upon us hard. We've lost Eric, we've lost Mackenzie, we've lost Dean.
This is the last
There's
of us.
been a nuclear attack.
They're out there somewhere, roughing it.
Carnage.
Nuclear, that's another good word.
I like to pronounce it nuclear.
Sam is
Yeah.
collecting funny sounding words today.
Not funny sounding words, just words that I really like.
Words that he likes.
I love it when.
What about
people say
loofah?
Nuclear.
I've always liked loofah.
Nah, that one always sounded weird to me. Sounds like the name of a Swedish prostitute.
Loofah.
Hello, I'm loofah.
It is Luva.
I'm here for your back rub.
I love you long time.
No.
Pass
Don't do
the
that.
hat. Everybody's got about 7 of
Loofahs.
these things they're going to try to squeeze into the conversation today. This is a conversational improv game. Each of our panel members has a list of topics and or phrases that were drawn from the chicken hat. Their goal is to sneak those topics and phrases into the conversation with a tangent. Another member of the panel can call you out saying, that's on your list. If they're right, they get a point. If you bluffed or if they're just wrong, you get a point. The list game is listener supported. Join the list game community at www.listgame.com. To contact the list game crew, email listgame@cox.net, COX. And don't forget the drinking game. Every time Sam says, like, kind of, or kinda like, you gotta take a drink. The topic question for today is, who and or what do we worship? Did we worship? Have we worshiped? Will we worship? What are we worshiping, folks? I've got some ideas.
I'd just like to start out by saying this is incredibly good timing to have a subject like this, because a couple of weeks ago I got done reading American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and it's all about this sort of thing. It's really like just like a really cool contemporary look at how we worship stuff.
And what
how it
does
kind of
Neil
evolves.
Gaiman worship?
Well, he's a writer. He just sort of like writes cool stuff.
He worships the pen.
Okay, if you could say. Incidentally, there's a character in it who is the Greek god of writing, I believe. Thoth, I believe is his name.
You keep using that word, incidentally. I do not think you know what it means.
Wrong in-word. But yeah, like, I read American
Careful,
Gods
you'll open
recently.
up freshly healed wounds.
Okay, basically I read American Gods recently, or listened to it, an audiobook rather. And what I really love about it is it's not just like contemporary American fiction or something like that. It's like, it actually takes a very interesting look at how we worship old gods, how it kind of evolves, and how exactly what we worship kind of reflects who we are as a society. Like, what exactly do we value, and what are we afraid to lose? In that one, like, the gods that we as Americans today worship are, I think, like a bunch of them, but like there are only 2 that are really focused on. One is the goddess of television. She disguises herself as like popular icons like Marilyn Monroe or Lucy from I Love Lucy. She is called Media. It was like, as soon as I heard that name, it's like, yeah, that's cool. Well played, Neil Gaiman. And it's like, it really just got me thinking as I was reading and as I was like kind of processing it afterwards. I really just love how exactly we as a society kind of like depict these things, how exactly we manifest these little values that we kind of collectively have as like these people, or just as like these
Just how they control
beings.
society.
Yeah.
Gods require personification.
Guys worship sports.
toward the end of the book, they also describe car gods that have like fumes coming out of their mouths. They have like lights coming out of their eyes, like headlights. He really gets creative with how he depicts them. But yeah, it really made me think, like, to gods, how exactly we had them evolve and how exactly we worshipped a couple million years ago or a couple thousand years ago relative to today. Because we don't really have like effigies or gods, but we have like idols, we have like actors we worship, we have like ideas we worship, but we don't really have like our own mentally manifested ideals that kind of like we create as like literal gods.
Well,
it's like,
I think it's because 5,000 years ago, we didn't have the kind of understanding we do now of nature. So all sorts of events were totally mysterious to us, and we created stories to give some sort of meaning to them.
Yeah, it's man's nature to justify his own existence.
Right.
To question it and to formulate his own answers.
One could say that human beings are built to require a myth in order to understand our place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we lack one, we make one. And so in the past, if you look at Egyptian or Greek myths, they have these pantheons of gods that are totally interesting, and they have these creation stories that are totally unique. But
they all have origin stories.
They do. Each culture in the world, each people in the world has their own origin stories. They have their own view of how the world came to be, and some of them are fascinating. You know, some of the Native American ones have a giant turtle that, you know,
The spirit turtle.
yeah, that we came from.
That's the mortal enemy of the evil clown.
The evil clown.
Only Stephen King fans will understand that.
I get it. I haven't even read the book.
So everybody's got their myths because everybody has this internal psychological requirement to know where we are in the world.
Yeah, both as individuals and as collective societies and communities, we strive to answer these questions.
Right.
These are questions we can't really leave unanswered.
You know, in the past it was easier to create gods for anything, right, and everything, and that's why we ended up with pantheons up until relatively recently, when, you know, monotheism sort of took over.
Yeah.
But even when monotheism was its thing, it's still, Catholicism has their Holy Trinity
Yeah.
with
And
you
they've
know,
got
God,
angels and archangels.
you know, there are all these saints that are worshipped, and so
Yeah, there's
we're
still
back to a pantheon,
a divine hierarchy.
even though you're only supposed to worship the one, right? It's much larger than that. It goes well beyond, and so.
What I really find interesting, though, is when not only do we have like gods to explain like how the world works or like how nature works, but also when we have gods that kind of describe kind of like just our cultural values, like how in Greece they had like what was the name of the god of like wine and fertility? I keep
Dionysus.
I think it's Dionysus.
Dionysus, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think you're
Bacchus
right.
is his Roman name.
Oh yeah,
Right.
It's like it really just gets me thinking a lot about how not only do we need stuff to explain like the why or the how, but also like kind of to reflect just how we operate, how exactly we
A reason to party. Dionysus, we
kind-
gotta keep this guy happy.
yeah, it's kind of like
Everybody worship the
yeah,
gods.
it's like it's like justification. It's like, why do we do these things? So it must have some kind of divine purpose, right?
Right? Pan is another one.
Nowadays we have the Beastie Boys telling us we have to fight for our right to party, you know?
Right.
I also think it's interesting that way back when the gods that human beings once worshipped, they had everything to do with the necessities of life.
bare
For
necessities.
instance, folks worshipped sun gods and gods of the field.
I was going to say, who do you think the first god was? I think it was the sun.
Yeah.
The great giver of life.
Yeah.
The giant death ball that gives light to everything. I mean, granted, if you're like a caveman way back when, and you're just like coming out of your cave and it's like, oh, everything dark. And then like this giant ass ball of light just comes careening out of the horizon and like goes back under, and it's just like, holy shit, man. This gotta mean something.
Right, and the druids read messages from the solar flares.
Yeah.
It was, it's talking to us.
And astronomy has also figured into.
Druid, where's my
religion.
car?
Wasn't that a title of the
think
title
it's a
of
Billy
an
Mandy
episode of Billy and
episode.
Mandy? Yeah, I remember.
I just like
remember
that
one.
pun. It's just so dumb, but I like it.
Anytime you
What do
use
you-
druid in a song or a poem, you have to rhyme it with fluid. Druids and fluids. We did.
And there's a good band name.
Druid fluid.
Druid.
What kind of fluid?
But I think it's ironic that probably the very first thing we worshipped, which was the sun, now, in this point in time, it is the only thing logically that actually still makes sense to still worship. Mm-hmm. Because
so.
it actually is the only thing that actually provides everything for us.
And we have proof that it's there.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
we can
literally
look up every
is-
day and see it.
Yeah, I mean, even everything, every piece of coal that we burn, everything that we do, every energy source that we have,
Every plant that grows
whether
depends
it's the
on
air,
sun.
whether it's solar, whatever energy you get, its source was originally the sun, and was processed by the sun. The sun does it all. So. Yeah, and sadly, now that we all know this, the one thing we don't worship is the sun. Mm-hmm. Ironic.
Which
That is
kind of like begs the
ironic.
question: what do we worship nowadays?
Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah, social media.
exactly.
Yeah, but we still technically have pantheons. We have fictional characters that we idolize and kind of like reflect our own experiences onto, like the DC universe. We have Marvel.
Right.
We have
Star Wars.
celebrities. We have there's Star Wars. We have mythology. It all kind of like stays similar, but we kind of like look at it differently because we're kind of conditioned more to think a bit more like tangibly. We have more of a mindset of like having to understand things from a scientific point of view, whereas if we look at something like this, using the DC universe as kind of like the go-to example, it's like unlike millions of years ago where we looked at things like, oh, this is just how the things are, this is just how the world works. We kind of look at it as kind of like a reflection of our own human experience. We kind of look at Superman and think, what does it mean to be like this ultra powerful creature that's better than all of mankind? What does it mean
And
to have
yet,
that kind of
Superman worships Solomon Grundy.
philosophy? Is that a thing in the comics? I'm not a big DC guy.
No, I made that up.
Uh,
But you gotta love Solomon Grundy, man.
Wait a minute.
Everybody worships Solomon Grundy.
No. I've got a connection here. Batman worships Solomon Grundy. You know why?
Why?
Because Ben Affleck, who now plays Batman, was also in The Accountant. In The Accountant, whenever he's incredibly stressed, he always uses the Solomon Grundy poem to calm himself down.
That's right.
So whenever he's like in a battle, he's like, Solomon
Is this
Grundy,
gonna connect
born out
to
of my
Kevin Bacon at some point?
What does Kevin Bacon have to do with anything?
The 6 degrees.
There's 6 degrees.
I don't know what we're talking about now. I'm just making that.
Ah, the young.
We certainly idolize celebrities and certain fictional characters and whatnot, and draw a lot of influence from them. But do we really worship them on a spiritual level the way we would a god?
Well,
Well, there's nerds with body pillows, man. They gotta worship something, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's tough to say whether it's exactly the same, whether it fulfills, ticks all the boxes.
I have seen an altar to Pee Wee Herman.
Alternate Pee Wee Herman, man.
Blood for the blood god!
I mean, you've got paparazzi. If you look at, for instance, some of the icons from rock and roll, let's say, a lot of them, in some ways, are worshipped.
Yeah, Elvis was worshipped.
We still have effigies to him. We still have, like...
If you go to Graceland, it's not like visiting a holy place. In some senses, a case could be made, right? That people are indeed fulfilling a
They
spiritual.
see it as a temple.
Yeah, that they see it as a temple and they're fulfilling a spiritual fulfillment by walking the grounds where he lived. right? Maybe
Like
it
going
is.
to Jesus's tomb.
That's right. That's right.
Praying at the toilet he died on.
Praying at the toilet he died on, man. Why not?
Drinking from it. Getting baptized in it. Yeah.
Anointing yourself.
Licking the holy blood splatter. One of my favorites is going into the South Pacific and the islands and then volcanoes, man. You've seen stories growing up about the people that worship the volcanoes.
Yep,
And
yep.
you got to throw somebody in the volcano to keep it happy because the volcanoes have attitude.
That's right.
Volcanoes have some serious attitude, man. You don't want to piss off the volcano.
I like how it's kind of like the first thing we think of when it's like Aboriginal Polynesian people. It's like throwing people in volcanoes, man. Like, if we think of like people in Eastern Europe, do we instantly think of like Chernobog? Do we think of people getting their heads smashed with a hammer?
We think of people in tracksuits squatting.
That's Slavs.
That's Eastern Europe. Where do you think the Slavs live?
You ever see that picture of the Iron Giant where it's like he's squatting and someone just photoshopped some Adidas track pants onto him? It's like the Iron Slav.
So when do we start talking about Scientology?
Fuck Scientology.
I was hoping you guys would hold off on that one.
Fucking Tom Cruise, fucking
John Travolta.
John Oh yeah.
Earl
Cult.
from My Name is Earl.
It's all cult.
I'm
yeah,
never
it's
coming out.
a cult of money.
Yes, it's a cult of money.
Once,
They worship the green god.
That's it.
once a friend of mine who knows me way too well took me on an ironic trip to the L. Ron Hubbard Museum in LA on Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to see the way they put a happy face on their little scheme.
Oh yeah.
And they
this is
really
crazy.
twisted my arm to buy stuff too.
We can see that. For those of you who can't see, he has a broken hand. So he has a huge cast.
Things
on
got
his hand.
exciting last night.
It's funny, the lady who was leading the tour through the museum started calling me philosopher after a certain point because I was asking too many incisive questions.
Oh, what are you, some kind of critical thinker?
Yeah,
Fucking-
seriously.
You gotta
Exactly. No,
think.
it was more derisive than anything. Or derisive.
that's
however
hilarious.
What
you pronounce it.
society was it that saw the moon as our mother? And it was even like the actual planet Earth was born from the moon,
Either way
or
around.
the leader. No, I
sounds
know,
like
but
a-
there's
sounds
a
like a
society that believed
pagan view.
that believed that the people were born from the moon. That the moon was this female, matriarchal type that birthed us all.
That sounds like paganism.
Yeah.
Also, well, pagan, doesn't that like describe just any religion that's like pre-Christ that's like outdated? or
True,
something?
but like Wicca. That's
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
the popular conception of paganism.
Also,
You could call the Romans and the Greeks.
Yeah, I don't remember which specific cultures believe this, but I believe my dad told me at some point that some cultures believed that, considering like the pattern we see on the side of the moon that we see that's facing toward us all the time, they always envisioned a woman, like a young woman,
Right.
holding up a rabbit.
I think that's
it's like
a
a sign of
Celtic
fertility.
thing. I
Yeah.
think the mothered
think-
by the
yeah.
moon
So-
thing is a Celtic deal.
Yeah. So basically, the way, if my understanding and memory of this is correct, is that there were the Celtics up in the UK and that area, and then there were Germanic tribes that were in the northern part of Europe, and there were various smaller tribes, like through what is now modern day France and Italy, and that all these different peoples had, Germanic folks had Thor and Wotan and the entire pantheon there, and then
Nordic gods.
the
And that's some
Nordic
good
gods.
stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah. there's some-
Bjork Titans,
That's right.
killing giants and
Absolutely.
stuff.
Frost giants.
Frost
Getting
giants.
ugly.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. All that good stuff. The Celtics, we don't know that much about, but we think that they did worship the moon. We think that they, unfortunately, the reason we don't have any information on all this stuff is because when Christianity came through, they pretty much wiped it all out.
They destroyed
Yeah.
libraries, whatever they had.
and they built
Co-opted a lot of their holidays. holidays. For instance.
Exactly, and that's why we have Christianity, the Christian Christmas when we do, because it was a pagan holiday.
Halloween.
Just about every single Christian holiday was actually a pagan holiday that was incorporated.
They changed
into
the
Christian-
name, right.
They changed the name, kept the
Oh
date.
no, this is when Jesus was born.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
right.
and
no.
just about every single
This is
church.
when we all snuggle in winter and
That's
get
right.
it on. That's what we do.
That's right. And then every all throughout Europe, the churches were actually built on the holy sites that were the ancient sites. So where people always went to go worship, they would continue to go to
Right.
the same place. It just now has a church on it rather
Even
than.
correct me if I'm wrong. It was Stonehenge was more, and it was bigger.
Yes.
And the Crusades or whatever came along and said, "Oh, we're gonna wreck this thing."
No. Actually, we don't know how old it is. It's
Yeah,
really,
that's-
really, really old, and we
Yeah.
don't know when we lost it. All that history is gone. But Stonehenge might be one of those things, that was around before recorded history. So
yeah, there's supposedly evidence on the top of the stones that it had more than one story.
yeah, there
that
is.
it may have been a lot taller.
It's definitely pre-Roman.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been around pretty much before
Thousands
recorded
of years,
history. Yeah. Our recorded history only goes roughly around 4,000 to 5,000 years.
It was destroyed by one of them volcanoes, man.
They sacrificed Stonehenge to a volcano.
God dang volcanoes.
Those volcanoes will come and get you every time if you're not careful. You got to throw
You're
people
slowly
in them.
turning into Bruce from Family Guy.
I don't want to step over there. You just step in one of them waterfalls.
don't want to get sacrificed to those
Those volcanoes. They'll take you. They'll take you right out.
Little too warm for me. So how about Cthulhu, am I right?
Cthulhu.
Oh
yeah, Dark Lord, totally.
totally.
Dude, H.P. Lovecraft. I gotta get on that shit. It's like, I love that mythology, but I haven't actually read the books.
Have you seen the
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
The writing is subpar. All right, as far as writing goes, I've read
But it's
everything.
You gotta
Lovecraft,
remember, this
right?
was written in 1914.
50s.
No, it's
Oh,
like way
Early
back.
20th century.
Yeah,
It's not great writing. It
early
is-
industrial era.
From what I understand, the dude was having trouble getting published, and it wasn't until he went weird that he actually got published. But he just wasn't a great writer.
Not a lot of people running around America that could even read at the time.
But the story is fantastic. The ideas are really
It's like the
so
pre-
different that it
Yeah,
makes
it's like
it
the precursor to Stephen King. It's like
four
the
people sitting
writing
here right
itself
now.
is kind of okay, but the prose is what makes it brilliant.
We got to do a rewrite.
got to do a rewrite.
We will rewrite Cthulhu. We'll make it better.
What's funny?
We
What's
gotta
funny?
translate it into pagan religions. Like, we gotta have it spoken in
I
tongues.
actually I don't remember. I sadly don't remember the name of the author, and I don't remember the name of the book. But I found a book some 15 years after I read all the Lovecraft novels that on the back claimed like this guy thought Lovecraft was a horrible writer and decided to write a Lovecraftian story that was well written. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what this is. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. It was some of the
Awesome.
best writing I've ever, it was one of the best stories I've ever
What
read.
was the story?
Well, it was very Lovecraftian. I mean, it was literally like a Lovecraft
No,
story.
I guarantee you
Who's
it's
the writer?
on his shelf in
That's
his
what I'm saying. I
house.
don't remember the guy's name, and I don't remember the name of the book.
Oh,
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Damn, Cthulhu, you look good in that purple jacket.
I'm gonna go home and Google it and find it because it was really well done. And so,
Dr. Seuss is the Sneetches. If a good writer can sniff as much glue as he did,
I picked,
Sniffing that glue.
gotta keep sniffing glue, man.
I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing.
Glue Thulu.
Airport.
Airplane. It's called airplane.
Oh,
Sniffing
airplane, yeah.
glue and or eating mushrooms
Oh,
and
yeah.
or
Oh, sure.
that's another whole deal.
Yeah, a lot of people seek out spiritual experiences
Right.
through substances. Peyote man.
And in fact, I'll tell you, like one of the guys who's really big on that is this guy named Terence McKenna. You may have heard or read of him.
Sounds familiar.
And so Terence McKenna, he's like an ethnobotanist or some shit. And he went around with his brother to South America and all over the world and tried all sorts of different hallucinogens with natives and had, massive spiritual experiences of massive amounts of different hallucinogenic substances. And would then go around and give talks and write papers and had all these really crazy theories. And he talked about myths. And one of the things that he talked about was how humans should make their own myths today because we understand this now. We understand that we are myth-making machines.
Hence, we have the Pastafarians.
And so his idea, which I thought at the time that I heard it was pretty brilliant, his idea is that our modern myths, if we wanted to become a sane people, is that we should, our new myths should be that the ego is a product of pathology, and that when the suppression of the ego means the defeat of the materialists and the product peddlers and the dominators, and that the feeling of immediate experience is the glue that holds communities together.
The glue that we sniff.
And that when love is a genuine value in a society, the people will be sane. And that when you don't have these things, when you have the dominators and the product peddlers and the
Corporations.
right. In control and in power, that you just have insanity and you have people doing crazy, terrible things to one another.
After all, these are the people who set the values of our society.
Right. And so I think Terrence hit on something when he said that, we could create our own myths. We should create our own myths, and our new myths should be something along those lines.
Well, you could argue that, again, considering like the way that our arguable mythology works nowadays, it's kind of like all of our values are kind of like put directly into our fiction. Like the way that we write fictional characters and fictional universes kind of like reflects how exactly we think and how exactly we express our values. It's like the reason that we have always written, the way that we've always told stories is always kind of like to express what exactly we as a society kind of need, value, and just kind of like it wouldn't catch on if it didn't resonate with people. Like if people didn't find something to gravitate toward. That's a lot of the reason that stuff like
Especially gravitating towards each other. You got to scramble your chakras. You got to scramble your own chakras.
I don't know
you gotta
about the
scramble
chakra
your
stuff,
chakras with other people's chakras. You got to mix that stuff up, man. It's got to touch each other.
Chakra soup.
That's it.
That was also a kind of curse that was threatened at some point. When I was looking at, I guess it was Buddhist stuff or something. The priest would say, like, okay, I'm going to make you start over, and I'm going to take your chakras and go, and flip them around and all that. And now you're a kid again. You got to start over.
But yeah, that's a good observation. But yeah, books and stories that have, and movies, you name it, that have real merit, they've all got a point behind them, and the point usually reflects society. The characters are representative of ourselves, what we may all experience.
We're myth-making, story-creating animals.
machines.
Yeah.
And also,
we
one thing-
love to make stories.
One thing I also got thinking about, considering, like, you know how people nowadays, whenever they watch superhero movies, for example, they're always like, oh, I wish it was more realistic. We want it more gritty, some shit like that. It's like, arguably, that's like bad storytelling because it's like you gotta have some kind of like tonal, kind of like emotional roller coaster to take people on, or else people aren't going to be interested. But that's more writing more than actual mythology. But one thing that also kind of struck me was that the reason people want that is because they want something to latch onto. If it's too crazy and out there and doesn't really have much emotional like weight to it, then people are just going to be like, oh, this is kind of a waste of time. This is stupid. The reason that we have stuff like Batman losing his parents and kind of like reflecting his anger out onto like Gotham and being all like, oh, I gotta make Gotham a safe place. It's like, that's kind of what a lot of people want. Everyone kind of has that little bit of, I want to make the world a better place. I want people to be able to communicate and like have some kind of typical mindset they can latch onto. Everyone kind of wants to communicate kind of like to each other and to themselves with this like fiction that we all kind of are able to
Yeah, I think that's
identify
an
with.
a real important aspect of religion, the innate gravitation on the part of human beings towards a sense of community.
Right. We all want to relate
to each other, yeah.
We all want to relate to one another. We want to relate to our experiences. I want you to understand what I'm feeling. I want to be able to understand what you're feeling and acknowledge those experiences. You know, that's kind of the point of life in a lot of ways.
This is expressed in a lot of early worship and religions in the fact that you will see, the coincidental prophets. It's throughout Egyptian religion and the Bible and all that, where you could say, oh, this person from Egyptian religion is basically this same person in the Bible, and they're expressing the same thing you're talking about. Now,
Yep.
that we each want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that the whole thing that Terence McKenna is arguing for is essentially what every religion also vies for. Like, there isn't a religion out there that doesn't think the ego is bad and that you should give up your power to some greater power. Like, that's the point of most religions. The problem is that most religions have these crazy stories around them, and most people don't ever try to lower their egos. In fact, they get larger egos around their religions.
Yeah.
It's a Streisand effect. You want to suppress people,
That's
they're just
also-
going to want to rise up and shit.
Yeah.
That's also involved with the manipulation of the religion. That is, they turn it into a thing to manipulate the people.
That's right.
To control the masses.
For instance, almost all of the Christian religions that are considered mega churches, where they're all about this gospel of, I think they call it a gospel of.
It lives within you.
No. It's like a wealth gospel. Like their gospel is that everybody needs to be wealthy, and that God wants you to be wealthy, and that wealth is great, and these people.
Putting our stock in money, right?
And they really literally worship money in a lot of ways. And they have these mega churches that are super huge because they get tons of money from their worshipers because it's this self-feeding thing. And it is crazy. It is absolutely insane. These are like, I don't know, these people don't seem to understand the words that are on the page, because Jesus was very clear when he said that it was harder to get a camel through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, which seems like pretty clear-cut statement, which Jesus made.
Blessed on the cheesemakers.
You know, and if Jesus says if it's harder to get a camel through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, how these people can say that being rich is what God wants, it's a total fucking
Totally
disconnect.
backwards, man. Yeah.
It's a total disconnect.
The lesson here is that
like
the
the way
four
that
of us
sounds,
need to
by the
start a church.
That's right. We need our own religion.
Daddy needs a new pair of shoes.
It is the easiest way. I mean, look at Scientology. Those guys are super mega
And
wealthy.
here we are.
Televangelists.
Look at how many billions of dollars, and they don't have to pay taxes. They're a tax-free organization. It's a travesty beyond travesty. Seriously.
Yeah, that's the thing
Be
about
the Great Order of the Venus flytrap.
Great Order of the Venus flytrap. We will be the wigs of Anubis. And we will.
In all honesty,
That dude
I'm
had
not really,
quite a hairdo. Must be a wig.
In all honesty, I'm not really like, I don't really feel that strongly one way or the other about like religion or like how it is in America nowadays. It's like, you know, people are allowed to worship what they want. It's like, it's not really a huge thing. My problem is the whole taxation issue, because if you're going to have like this huge, like essentially funnel for like these worshippers to give their money to these guys, it's like there should be some taxation. There should be some kind of like
There should be a
regulation to
point.
it.
Yeah, it's like if your great megachurch makes past this,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then like, yeah, your head guy is flying around in his own private jet. I'm sorry, you know, it's time
Yeah.
to chip in to the
Yeah.
rest of the world there,
Yeah.
buddy.
I mean,
they only need so much money to operate their churches.
Even a super established churches like Catholicism has immense amounts of money. I mean, amazing amounts of money.
I don't know if this is still
The
true,
Pope's
but I
a
know,
baller, dude.
I know in the 80s, in this whatever thing I read, they were talking about the fact that the Vatican could feed the entire world
Yeah.
for decades.
Yeah.
And they just sit on the money.
They just sit on their money. They have unbelievable amounts of wealth.
And they say that they're like, oh, we're helping the poor.
They don't do nothing.
You ain't doing jack shit.
They ain't doing-
Yeah, I think that's the major pitfall of religion, is that it can easily be used to control people and or make lots of money.
That's right. That's right. And it's because human beings have this innate need for an understanding of where they are in the universe, and there's very few things out there that provide that. And one of them is religion. And so
And some
are
people
easily-
really prey on that need.
Oh yeah.
And that's where cults come from.
That's exactly where cults come from. And now we're back to Scientology.
Back to Scientology.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah, of course, Scientology did begin as a tax dodge on L.
Yeah.
Ron Hubbard's part.
Absolutely.
He was making a bunch of money writing his books and
Yeah.
said, what am I going to do to keep all this
That's
money?
it. That's it.
Yeah, he didn't even call it a religion when he first theorized.
Yeah, it was just Dianetics. It was
Yeah.
just a model for like, good human living type of thing, right? And
And then he realized he could be tax exempt.
and when he sent it to like the board of psychologists to review, they sent back to him that it was junk.
Yeah,
And,
pseudoscience.
and he hated psychologists from then on and wrote into everything, psychology as a field is complete, suppressives. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh yeah, their views on psychotherapy are so
Yeah.
absurd.
Screw these professionals. We're
Yeah.
all alien
Yeah.
spirits that got
Yeah.
brainwashed.
Yeah, that's right.
We're all
That's-
just children that
We love
have been
Xenu.
brainwashed in schools.
You got too many thetans in you.
You got too many thetans. Well, it's crazy. I mean, we live in a culture in a world nowadays where people literally like worship skinny jeans and shit.
Yeah.
Dude, I went to
Don't even
H&M
know.
recently, and every single pair of pants was either skinny or super skinny.
Yeah.
How do you fit
That's
into super
literally-
skinny? Do you
that's
not value the
literally the case.
circulation
Then you're
in your
holier
pants?
than thou. Especially if your skinny jeans have a couple of rips in them.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, seriously, I know
Now
that's
you're
a
really
tangent, but how do you fit into super skinny jeans? Unless you're anorexic, I think you're gonna have some problems with circulation.
Balls are getting smaller. That's how you fit in them.
Palms are sweaty.
So, since we were talking about like the origins of a lot of this worship and everything, I also wanted to bring up the fact that I think a lot of the way religions came about and worship came about was actually affected by sickness, by disease, and plagues. It was a good scare tactic at the very least.
Yeah.
How are you going to have your good life and have romance in the time of plagues without your God? Because if you don't have your God, you're going to get the Black Plague, man. You're going down.
Totally.
Mackenzie, would you like to
Oh yeah, I'd like to say something about Star Wars. Star Wars is mythology.
Oh, should my kitty cat headphones?
So, did I bring up cargo cults last time?
Are those like cargo pants except with Kool-Aid?
Cargo cult is where a less advanced civilization meets a more advanced civilization.
Prime directive, baby.
And the less advanced civilization becomes totally enamored and usually begins to worship some aspect of the more advanced civilization. So, for instance,
Aliens.
So when planes show up in some Pacific Islands, right, and the Pacific Islanders have never seen planes and never seen anything like that, so they're like, holy crap, there's this plane coming, and it lands, and they get out and they give them stuff, and they meet, these advanced people. They can't communicate right away, right? And so they leave. And when they leave, these guys are like, oh, we want them to come back. So they build a replica of the plane out of bamboo on the ground and then worship it. Cargo cult. Cargo cult just got created. And a cargo cult, I believe, probably influenced all kinds of past civilizations when a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization, and then they just get confused about what it is they saw. And so you've got these myths in South America, like in Mayans, had these myths of these white guys with beards who showed up and with technology and showed them all this stuff, and you got these were aliens that came and showed them stuff. Well, maybe not. Maybe it was just an older society of humans.
Spaniards.
Or just an older society of humans, because I'm pretty sure that our recorded history of how humans became civilized is not complete.
It's missing some stuff.
It is an incomplete
Big
story.
time.
It's got to
Right.
be necessarily.
Right, and that we only go about 5,000. I would say that for at least 24,000 years, we were probably fairly advanced at different phases and in different places, and that the record of those things are underwater, right, and gone.
Right.
at
And
this
or
point.
other natural disasters.
Yep. And so I don't know where I was going with all that, but there it is. Cargo cult.
Well, non sequitur, but I do wonder how humanity's religious disposition in general will be affected by its increasing dependence on technology.
That's actually one of the things that's addressed in American Gods. There's a character in it who's essentially like physically manifested robot child called the technological child, I think. They don't really give him a name that often, but his whole thing is that he essentially represents every bit of like the soul-sucking factor of like our dependence on technology. He's like chubby, he's immature, he's essentially just like everything we're afraid of when it comes to like our dependence on this medium. And it's like, yeah, it kind of reflects everything that we're afraid of as a society and also what we kind of value in it. It's like, yeah, technology is great, it helps us communicate, but also like we kind of lose our sense of consequence. We get complacent, we get fat, we sit around all day, look at computers. It's like it helps us communicate, but what the hell are we saying in the long run?
Yeah, if and when we start getting, say, cybernetic enhancements, and we are, well, I guess, depending on your view, less or more than purely biological beings, you gotta wonder how that's going to affect one's view of creation.
Right.
If we're more than just humans.
Right. Exercise. Are we going to be those people in the chairs?
Are we gonna
floating
be
around from that cartoon?
Are we gonna
the
be that
robot?
Star Wars race that Mackenzie made up? The one where it's like they cybernetically enhanced themselves and somehow they lose their arms.
Are we going to worship an artificial super intelligence like that Twilight Zone where the guy would go into the cave to talk to the computer to find
Oh,
out what
yeah,
this
I remember that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was a great episode.
I could see a guy like going around with all kinds of like great big, parts on him, and it'll say like Ram Tough on the front because I have a bunch of Ram parts.
like the car gods from American Gods.
cybernetic ram people that are ram
Ram
tough. There'll be the commercial instead of the truck. It'll be like, get your ram tough legs.
I really just like that because so many things we're going through both in reality today and also in our fiction is always like, what if we like start replacing ourselves as like robot parts? Like how far can we go before we kind of like stop becoming these organic organisms and before we're just kind of like brains inside computers, man? And more importantly, imagine what you could do with like robotic legs, man. You got some powerful like Ferrari thighs.
Exactly.
We could all be the Hulk.
And computers can also influence our brains as well as our bodies.
Somebody somewhere worships the Borg.
Hello.
Somebody worships the Borg.
Or we will at some point have people on this planet that worship the people that are the Borg, because of course only the people with the money are going to have the cybernetic enhancements, and the not cybernetic poor people are going to be slaves.
Right.
And or food. Gotta eat people. Gotta eat people.
Right now, what's happening is AI is becoming a real thing, right?
Yeah.
And within like the next 10 years, they're looking at least 30% of jobs going by way of AI. So jobs that normal people used to do are going to be taken over by artificial intelligence because you don't need people to do a lot of things. And one example of this is there are burger joints that are going to have robot flipping burgers, robots making burgers, and you're going to walk in and you're just going to hit a screen and your order will come to you all automatic.
On the little conveyor belt or
There'll
whatever.
be one technical person there to fix any problems or glitches, but otherwise the entire establishment is going to be run completely automatically.
Which means eventually we'll have to come up with some other kind of economy
Yeah.
that says this is how you get your things and pay for your place to live and all that, because nobody's going to
Universal basic income is the only solution that I've
Bigger
heard of.
armies.
UBI, Universal Basic Income. Everybody gets like $2,000 a month baseline. And then if you have a job and you make money, right, that might offset that Universal Basic Income. But everybody gets that UBI base income, and that's what you get to live on. And if you want to do something else to get more or do something different, it might offset it.
just
but
be
it's
creative. Yeah.
but otherwise, nobody goes without.
And there's going to be a long period in between before that happens where things are going to get ugly.
Oh
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of
Things are
poverty.
gonna get
Oh
ugly.
yeah. Right now they're testing auto trucks that are self-driving, and these are semis, right? And semis make up one of the largest employers in America. And within the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to start losing those jobs to automatic trucks.
Yeah, already a lot of jobs have been phased out because machines are capable of doing them. I mean, heck, just look at assembly lines in factories. It's all machines. And already they've got McDonald's, like you were talking about. I think people still make the food, but nobody takes your order. You just
You just
put
walk
it in
up
on
to
a screen, yeah.
and pop it
It's
in.
like that episode of Jimmy Neutron where the evil McSpanky's restaurant starts vaporizing stuff. You know, that's Jimmy Neutron said it first, man.
By vaporizing, you mean it disappears or it appears?
No, I mean like it turns other restaurants into like molten steel and stuff.
Destroy the competition. Tonight on the 11 o'clock news, McDonald's nukes 32 Taco Bells. That solves that problem.
Send him straight to Taco Hell.
Dude, Daniel, ever seen Demolition Man? One of the running
Yes.
gags in that movie is that, for those of you who haven't seen it, that in the future, like, the only restaurant chain that still exists is Taco Bell, because as they say,
there was the wars.
the fast food wars. So I'm really just, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, how did that play out?
Okay,
Like,
what-
did we just have
the only thing I
McDonald's
want to know
troops?
is how do the 3 shells work?
No, that's what everyone asks. Everyone still asks Sandra Bullock, how do the 3 shells work? Dude, do you want to know? Do you really want to find out?
And why do we have to share the 3 shells? Why do they stay
Do they
there?
get washed off? Are they self-cleaning? What are they made of?
What's
Are
up
they
with the
real
3
seashells?
shells? What's up with the 3 shells?
Yes, there are people that worship Gumby.
Everybody loves Gumby.
Oh, they're Gumby.
That's how he ended up on SNL. He said, oh, wait a minute, we're going to plug into this Gumby religion here. A lot of building has gone into worship. Building of buildings,
Yeah,
minarets,
big churches.
Sure.
pyramids,
Sure.
churches.
Yep.
How far back does that go?
All
Well,
the
let's
way.
be honest,
Yeah.
pyramids are a bit of an overrated phenomenon, because you could say that it's like, oh, they all had some form of communication across centuries, or you could say the pyramids are just a very efficient way to build, given like limited building materials.
Totally.
I mean,
That's
it's kind
the-
of just like a good way to build stuff. It's like
Exactly.
building a little stack.
The earliest, besides just finding a cave and making it a temple, I believe if it hasn't already been done, somewhere out there, the archaeologists are going to find the Temple of Dung.
Like
It's
Temple
gonna
of
just
Doom,
be
but with shit.
made out of piles of various animal poo and stuff, and they figured out how to make bricks
On
out
top,
of it.
there's just a huge beetle.
I mean, there were little huts and houses and stuff. That's how they made their adobe or whatever you call it. It was
Sure.
crap, and hey.
Yeah.
So it's like
It
the
was-
Temple
it
of
was
Dung
clay.
exists.
Dude, it was clay.
Did they worship the dung? That I don't know.
Adobe clay isn't shit. It's clay with straw. What are you talking about, dude?
No, there was a
They could
lot.
grow
Well, okay,
shit in it.
Adobe. I used the wrong word. Maybe not Adobe, but there was, there is, and or was, Adobe-ish bricks where no, they did not have clay, but they had a lot of poo.
What do you never run out of?
Is it alien shit?
I'm not gonna look it up right now. Yes, it was alien shit. The flying saucers flew over, and they were just dropping off.
Daniel.
We gotta empty them.
They pinched one off, right? As,
Daniel,
they
I'm
were-
just imagining like flying saucer goes over this Aboriginal tribe, like somewhere in the Pacific Islands, just flies over, sits there for a second. It opens up its hatch, heavenly light comes down, and just
Okay, wait a minute.
And then they
Now
go,
that's a
we gotta
religious
build a
experience."
temple out of this. They start carving into it. and stuff.
Wait a minute. Have you guys seen the movie The Gods Are Crazy?
oh yeah,
The gods must be
crazy.
crazy.
The bottle.
Gods must be crazy.
bottle.
With the
With
Coke
the
bottle.
With the Coke bottle.
Yeah.
It's a classic, dude.
That is the perfect representation of a cargo cult.
Indeed.
Because what happens in that movie is that the bottle hits the ground. They have this bottle now, and they start using it, and they
they start getting
it-
greedy.
and bad things happen. Right, one thing after another, bad, and they try to get rid of it, and it hits the kid on the head, and it's just a horrible thing, right? And so they decide.
And at
no,
first it's this awesome tool.
At first they were like,
we can use it to make
wonderful.
this,
Yeah,
we
we
can do
can do
it for
this, we
that.
can do that, right?
And they
But
start
then-
to get greedy, and they
but
start to
then they
become-
get but then it adds this new dimension, and it goes to a bad place, and so they decide to get rid of it and throw it off
Coke
the edge of the
bottle
world, right?
And he's got to find the edge of the world so he can throw it off.
Because he's got to return the bottle to the gods, because the gods delivered this thing to them, which is,
because they must be crazy.
as I was saying, cargo cult.
Speaking of cargo cults, what's the movie in which I know it's in a post-apocalyptic setting? It's in the ruins of a city, and people think that derelict fast food icons are gods. Yeah, I
about
think it was
Battlefield
Battlefield Earth. Speaking of Scientology,
Yeah, we're back around.
while you were
Circles
still
once again.
learning how to spell your name.
I was being trained to talk the galaxy. Pixies! I'm a thespian!
That was literally
alien man.
some of the worst.
Doesn't it make you want to be a Scientologist?
Yeah, seriously.
It makes me want to study it. It makes me want to be all like, how can you worship this?
At least you got your gold. Back on the subject of religious building, I think it's worth noting that many of the earliest surviving structures and settlements of any form are religious in nature. Like we talked quite a bit about them when we were talking about the mysteries of the ancient world.
That's right.
Like that site in Turkey. I can't pronounce the name, but I think it translates to Potbelly Hill.
Up on Potbelly Hill.
Yeah, no, it's true. Every single ancient site, including
Stonehenge,
pyramids, every single one of them is a religious site.
Why do they put gargoyles on churches?
Oh yeah, there's actually a reason. No. Daniel knows that. You had to be.
No, that's not why they put gargoyles on churches.
That's why they put
That's
them
a
on
totally
famous
different
houses.
thing. The original gargoyles, though, were when the rich people of, be it Rome, I don't know where, realized that they didn't have to always carry a chamber pot all the way outside. And they made part of the wall in their house had a hole in it that basically had a toilet over it, right?
Yeah.
And then you would just pour water into that after you took a dump, and it would come out of the hole on the outside. So you just had this hole on the outside of your house where crap came out. Mm-hmm. And
They would dress it
then
up.
some of the rich people decided, well, I want to dress up my crap hole. And they would get the stone carver to make some cool little demon face or some happy little fairy or whatever, and the crap
That
came
shoot
out of
shit.
that.
It's
And
bedazzling the crap hole.
and that was the first gargoyles, and then they
Bedazzle
started to
the
make
crap
them into
hole.
dragons and demons and all that. And it's like, well, okay, now I'm building this place. Here's the thing where the crap hole is, and it's this kind of demony gargoyle looking thing. Let's put one up here on the corner of this wall and the corner of that wall, up on the roof to match. So it looks, and there you go. They were just
Decorative.
doing.
If only the ones they put on churches also spewed crap.
They did.
What was that show? HGTV.
They got pastors for that now.
The church part of it, that I think that does a different thing, because now you've got the churches that had, statues of angels, carvings of angels, and so now you're looking at it like, no, it's not so much to hide the crap hole kind of. I don't think it came from that. I think it's more into like representations of
Demonic and angelic figures.
right?
Yep.
Celestial chariots.
Life imitates art, dude. That's what we've learned from today.
That's it. Life imitates art.
And art imitates life. It's a symbiotic relationship.
That's why I love gangster rap.
What? What does that have to do with anything? I mean, if we want to
wrong
talk
with
about mumble
gangster
rap, it's kind of like the shit spewing gargoyles.
I don't know.
Fucking Little Yachty just being all like.
Is that on your list?
It is.
Yes,
Are you kidding me?
the first call of the day.
I should have called it.
I'm surprised
so
nobody's
obvious.
called me on anything. All of mine was so obvious.
The rule of thumb for me in this game is don't call out Daniel because he always just says weird shit.
It's true.
We've covered everything from shit spewing rappers to superheroes to L. Ron Hubbard and I don't know the space.
We forgot
turtle.
worshiping trees, gnomes, fairies. That'll be
true.
another episode.
Folklore, yeah.
If we want to talk about fairies, gnomes, and Scientology, we already talked about Tom Cruise.
So I have actually
He's short, he's a fairy,
a
and
really
he
great
worships
great
Scientology.
theory about all that. I think almost all fairy experiences are actually DMT experiences that people are having because your brain produces DMT naturally, and every now and again there's a blood-brain barrier that keeps the DMT from flooding your brain. But under certain conditions, if you have like ingest certain things or just the right variables or in dream states, you can easily break through that barrier and you will have a full-on DMT experience and maybe see fairies around trees.
All right, Blake, give me your points, man.
Okie dokie. I got gargoyles,
Oh,
Cthulhu, cybernetic enhancements. I said celestial chariot, but nobody really caught on, so I guess it doesn't count.
I think you can count
where'd
it.
you say that?
Yeah, we don't care today. We'll give it to you.
And then I got that one bluffed.
Yes, you did.
There was one bluff point. I was going to say,
Yep.
I think this is the first episode that I didn't get any bluff points.
That's right.
Give me your points, Sam.
Okay, I got sniffing glue, speaking in tongues, brainwashing school, and powerful thighs. That's when I said powerful thighs.
Very good.
These thighs are brought to you by Dodge Ram.
Nice. All right, so I've got paparazzi, the wig of Anubis,
What?
skinny jeans, Ram Tough, Gumby, and I got called
that shit.
and I got called on gangster rap.
I got Mothered by the Moon, Coincidental Prophets, Romance in the Time of Plagues.
Oh, I was thinking that plague. I'll let
And
plague
come on,
play.
nobody called me on Temple of Dung. That was a gimme.
That made a lot of sense to me.
Volcanoes with Attitude, The Venus Flytrap, Solar Flare Messages, and Scrambling Your Chakras.
Scrambled
I
chakras. on the
think,
side
I
of
think
bacon.
Daniel wins.
I got 8.
How'd you
Blake
know-
had 5, Rod had 5, Sam had 4.
Wait, how many actual like individual notes?
7. We had 7.
You
He
each
had
had
8.
7, I had 8.
And he played all 8, so we couldn't win.
He still would have won, yeah. If
So you couldn't
had
win
7.
unless
Well,
you
no,
called
no.
him on some
I'll
shit.
take a couple of mine off if
It's
you
all
want.
right. It's all right.
I
Either
still
way,
got
you
6 and I
win.
still won.
He patted
Either
the
way,
deck a
you
little,
win.
but he killed us. So
The game's rigged.
I think
He's a
it's the
druid.
first time that I won. I think it is.
it is. You deserve a win.
How?
It only took 13 episodes.
All right, another successful morning wasted getting
I won last
drunk, drinking coffee, and eating donuts and stuff. Brought to you by
Go
Vision.
Okay, last week I said something about taking a trip into the toy box, which we did not do today, so that is going to be next week. Think about weird toys, everybody. See you then.
I found one in my mom's drawer.
Smells funky.
Join the List Game community at www.listgame.com. To contact the List Game crew, email listgame@cox.net. COX.